Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. So here's the deal, y'all. First, I'm going to address the death of David Carroll and why I didn't say much about it before. And that's largely been because I've been somewhat desensitized, but also because there was a death almost in the family, but not quite. My American ex-wife's buddy, closest buddy from childhood, passed away. Mind you, I'm older than her. Older than either one. I don't know what caused it. No one's told me from what it is that she passed away. Just that she passed away. I tried to find her ex-husband on Facebook to let him know, and I couldn't find him at all. So I couldn't even inform him. Young folks passing away, relatively young. And what happens usually when someone passes away, Muslim or not, is that I have to start to think about, well, I better prepare for my own. And that's why it was that I started this YouTube channel. I initially began it to confront all of the non-black Muslims about anti-black biases they had, even though they were not hateful or violent. The fact is, if you're Muslim, you're not allowed to side against people that are oppressed and with those who oppress them. And I got sick of their biases, these ideas they just took for granted. And I wasn't the only one to do it. And I saw that some others have begun to take this up. A comedian, Nabil Abdul Rashid Obeneche out of the UK, who's really doing big things. Shout out to him. Shadid Muhammad, as I've talked about before. Danjuma Bihari. Abu Sama Zahabi. These are scholars or celebrities or both, of African origin, various nationalities, who are beginning to confront this and call the non-black Muslims out on it. I realize that this is largely being taken care of. Abul Bara Muhammad Amriki is another one. He'll get better with his delivery over time, inshallah. But so I realized that this was largely being taken care of, and I discovered this, and I said, okay, all right. Let me talk about this because we're not going to have solid family structures the way things are going. So I went ahead and talked about it. That's the gist of it. So, and I'm glad I did. I won't front. I mean, someone had to anyway. And death is largely why it is that I've got the channel. I know that there's going to come a time I'm in the grave, and we Muslims don't believe that the soul leaves the grave and goes straight to the permanent afterlife, but rather there's a barrier in which the soul is alive but in the grave and going through a precursor to what they're going to be dealing with in the permanent afterlife. And that's what we prepare for. And I would like to have some deeds that recur and that grow. And I'm going to end this topic by saying that if you have listened to me and then you become Muslim, even if you were convinced by someone else and you find it difficult to remain on the path, feel free to reach out to me on Discord or here or through blackjunction.com. I'll move on to the next topic now. So, shout out to Edward Anderson because he has asked a very valid question. And that valid question is largely, if black men are so bad, why don't sisters just start dating out and stop talking to brothers and talking so bad about brothers when we're not really as bad as the statistics tend to show? And I agree. Why not? What you waiting on? Because I can tell you straight, we ain't as bad as how we've been depicted lately. And I don't think we need to be patient with something like that. While we're depicted so badly, we just sit back and wait and be patient and deal with it. No, shuck that fit. The world is finding out, and we're finding out, and the statisticians are finding out, which is why it is that the CDC came out with what they came out with in 2015. What I observed with my own eyes in Atlanta was proven by a study that was not limited to Atlanta, and that is that straight black men in America are the last hire, first fire, face job discrimination, but they will make an exception to where you face none if you are a 9AY black man. You don't face it in the selection process, the interview, the hiring, the pay, or the promotion. That the job market will discriminate against a white 9AY man, but not against a black 9AY man. What's the reason? You figure that out. I have stated that when brothers do step out, we should at least avoid women who come from backgrounds that typically look down on black people because we're black. I've stated this before. If you think that means leave the Arab woman alone, which it may or may not, it definitely means leave alone the Pakistani woman, unless she's going to move away from her people. Not just her family, her people. Leave alone that Wyatt woman, unless she's going to move away from her people. That means if she's not about to live with you in a black environment, preferably a black government, leave her. I've stated that. You think I said that out of hatred? No, I said that for your benefit, gentlemen. Because you could marry some black women and you have to deal with the anti-blackness and it splits you up. Do you deserve to have to experience that? So Mr. Anderson has asked the question, and he's been astute in asking this question. He should. He's got every right to ask that question. It is a legitimate question. Why don't they? And we've come to understand, I can tell you straight, that here, these men who simply call themselves white, but they're Arab, have the very same idea and outlook on black women that the white men have, minus the hatred and the vitriol. But they do see them as just simply not being pretty because they're black. They're just not going to do it. I've been here almost 8 years. I've had 2 non-black Arab men and no black Arab men ask me about marrying a black woman. Now, the black Arab men can marry black Arab women if they want, but the non-black Arab men have been very vocal. They've not been very vocal with the hatred, but when I brought up that I don't want them trying to hook me up with a non-black woman, they looked at me like, why do you insist on that? And I'm like, what do you mean, why? Why don't you? Oh, that's right. Why do you insist on marrying a non-black Arab woman? Because you're a non-black Arab man. Well, that's why. Yeah, I know, right? So this is why it is I got to sit up and say to some folks, man, look, this isn't hatred here. This is still a safe place to live. Just understand. I mean, you're not going to be, man or woman, you're not going to be dehumanized here for being black or for any reason, but just understand they are not going to count you as being equally attractive. Now, with the women, it changes towards black men. And I'm going to say this to the ladies, though, sisters that are talking about swirling and divesting. My question for you, well, first let me point out, then I'll ask the question. Number one, what we've noticed lately is that every time there's some sort of relationship violence between a black woman and anyone, it's coming from a white man. Now, not every relationship results in this violence, but every time we've been hearing about violence, it is in the context of a relationship is with a white man. I'm not going to ask you why that is. I'm not going to ask you why they're knocking you upside the head. I am going to point that out, though. Then I'm going to ask you another question, ladies. Why is it that when you talk about swirling and divesting, you are automatically imagining and going after and pursuing one of the Wyatts and not one of the other men of color, unless it's another man of color that counts himself as a Wyatt, like an Arab or a Chinese or a Korean, who looks down on us? Why is it that you only want the ones that look down on you? And you don't give a shot to the other men of color that are more likely to look at you as being not only equal in person, but even equal in beauty? What is it about men who like you that you can't stand? Thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout.